Okay, so your directions are to factor. This is an easy trinomial because it starts with a 1x squared. So we're going to open our parentheses. The two components that make up x squared would be x and x. And then we have to look at the back number. In this particular case, we're looking at the factors of 40 that subtract to give me 3. So the factors that multiply to give me 40 but subtract to give me 3 would be 8 and 5. So I can put those in the back. Now, when I combine the 8 and the 5, I'm going to combine them in such a way so that I get a negative 3 result. So, since it ends with a negative, the signs have to be different. One positive, one negative. Since the 3 is negative, the larger one will take on that sign. So that means that 8 needs to be negative and the 5 positive. Okay, so that's your first one. Your answer, of course, is x minus 8, x plus 5. The second one is a hard trinomial. Now I'm going to rewrite it where I can reach it. Unfortunately, my microphone won't reach that far. Okay, this one's a hard trinomial. That means it starts with a number in front. So I'm going to have to look for the factors of 8, which will be 8 and 1 and 4 and 2. And I'll have to combine that with the factors of 15, which would be 15 and 1 and 5 and 3. And I have to combine that in such a way that I get something that subtracts to give me 2. Okay, so where do I start? So I'm just going to start with the 4 and the 2. I don't know if it works or not. I call mine trial and error. There are a ton of other ways to factor though. So if you have a different way to factor, that's great with me. Just pick whatever works for you. I'm going to try 4x and 2x. Those are both going to go on the front because the 8's on the front. 4 times 2 is 8, all on the front. In the back, I'm going to try 5 and 3. 5 times 3 has to go on the back because 15 is on the back. Now, I don't know if it works or not. I have to try it. So here's how I try it. I'm going to make rainbows. So my first rainbow here is a 12x. My second rainbow here is a 10x. Those will subtract to give me 2x. Because remember, that's what I'm looking for in the middle. So since those will give me a 2x, I've successfully placed the values in the parentheses. I need the larger one to take on the sign. So since the 2 is positive, that means the 12 should be positive, the 10 should be negative. Now, there's no 12 up there, so you have to see what makes up the 12. So 4 times 3 makes up the 12, so that should be positive. And 5 times 2 makes up the 10, that should be negative. And that would be your answer. Your last one is grouping. The way that I know it's grouping is that it has 4 terms. So if you have 4 terms, you want to try grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2 and the last 2. In the first 2, what they have in common is an x, and the smallest x is x squared. So I'm going to take an x squared out of just these 2 pieces. So that leaves me with 3x minus 5. My little trick is when I'm grouping, I always bring the third sign straight down. Okay, now I don't worry about signs anymore. In the back group, 12 and 20 share a common factor of 4. So I'm going to take a 4 out of this group. Now it happens to be actually a negative 4. So if I'm looking for what's left, negative 4 times 3 x would give me a negative 12x. And if I'm looking for a positive 20, I need a negative times a negative because 2 negatives would make a positive. 4 times 5 would make 20. Now that's the first step of grouping. What you'll notice about this first step of grouping is that these 2 terms are alike. That's your greatest common factor. We're going to factor that out to the front. So 3x minus 5 is going to come to the front. I'll take out one of them from each term. So what's left behind is x squared minus 4. And I think, yay, we factored it, we've grouped it, we've done that part. But you always look to see if it'll factor further. The 3x minus 5 will not factor further, but this one over here is the difference of squares. So it's going to factor one more time. So we have 3x minus 5. And remember how to factor squares. You have x and x, 2 and 2. Remember when you factor squares, you have one positive and one negative. And that's your answer.